Wong Foo, thanks for everything, Julie Newmar, the only real Catwoman, is a 1995 American road trip comedy drama film directed by Beeben Kidron, starring White Men Can't Jump's Wesley Snipes, Roadhouse's Patrick Swayze, and John Leguizamo as three New York City drag queens who embark on a road trip. Its title refers to an iconic autograph photo of Julie Newmar they carry with them on their journey. Newmar also has a cameo appearance in the film, right at the very end. She's Nick. She walks in and she asks the three drag queens if they've heard of the Avengers initiative. The film was released in the U.S. on September 8th, 1995, and held the number one spot at the North American box office for 2 weeks, with a worldwide gross of $47.8 million. Critical response was mixed, as you could imagine, with particular criticism towards the plot and its familiar elements. But the performances of Swayze, Snipes, and Leguizamo were lauded. Yeah, I'm gonna gush over Leguizamo in this movie. At the 53rd Golden Globe Award, Swayze was nominated for the Golden Globe for Best Actor, Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. Leguizamo was nominated for Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor, Motion Picture. World Golf Hall of Fame member Juan Antonio Chichi Rodriguez sued Universal Pictures for defamation, especially involving the use of his name in the film, eventually settling on undisclosed terms. So yeah, it was a $30 million movie. It did not do tremendously well by modern standards. It only made $47.8 million, which is
no surprise there.
Yeah. The film was nominated for Outstanding Film at the 1996 GLAAD Media Awards. To Wong Foo is considered groundbreaking for being the first mainstream Hollywood production to depict drag queens. Rita Kempley of the Washington Post wrote that in comparison to previous films that featured cross-dressing like Some Like It Hot or Tootsie, the heroines in To Wong Foo aren't cross-dressing to escape the mob or to prove a point. They're just being true to their nature. And I'm not going to, there's a whole thing on here about this, but I'm going to leave it there. Everything I said about Priscilla, I will say yet again about To Wong Foo. Very much aware of this film at the time. Couldn't have cared less about the subject matter. Didn't see it until I watched it for this podcast. I watched it last year. It was funny because last year was also the Roadhouse remake, so I had to watch Roadhouse for the first time. And it's so funny because I'm now realizing how little Patrick Swayze I've watched over the years. And when
you're right.
What an interesting actor he is. I saw Ghost when it came out, but I didn't see Roadhouse. I didn't see To Wong Foo, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of Patrick Swayze I just completely ignored.
To be honest, I had only seen, there was Roadhouse for the review last year, but other than that, I had seen Donnie Darko. I think I had tolerated exactly one viewing each of Ghost and Dirty Dancing.
Yeah, Dirty Dancing I saw when it came out.
Sean thought he was straight at the time. It was a different time. Onions on my belt and everything. But I couldn't really appreciate it for what it was as a straight man. This is one of those movies that I almost want to say I regret waiting so long to see it, but at the same time, I absolutely know there was no way I would have fallen in love with it if I had first seen it any other time except for when I did.
My son watches a lot of the same movies I watch for these podcasts. Some of them he can't. He's too young, and I refuse to let him. But there are other movies where I'm like, no, you're fine. This is fine. This was one he bowed out of. Because he asked me the other night. Yeah, he asked me. He's 11. He asked me the other night, and he goes, do you have your second job tonight? Can we watch a movie? And I said, well, Wednesday night I don't. Wednesday night I'm all clear. And he was like, okay, well, what movies do you have? And he already knows how to get me. He's like, well, what movies do you have to watch for your podcast? Because I'll watch them with you. I'm like, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, To Wong Foo. Thank you for everything, Julie Newmar. And Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And he went, fuck. I did this joke on.
Did he actually say fuck?
No. I make my kids sound a lot filthier than they really are. For laughs. But I did this joke on Monday where I looked at him and I saw in his eyes his mother as he said to me, Father, does everything have to be about your stupid podcast? And so we ended up watching The Critic instead.
Cold.
That is my son. I no, I accept that about him. He's preparing himself. He's putting on his war paint and his armor for the world that lies ahead of him. In any case, yeah. So we did not. I did not watch these with him. And the only point of me bringing that up, and then I'm gonna get into the plot synopsis, is I don't
Mm.
think, despite the fact that his sister is firmly entrenched in this community, I don't think he can truly. These are not. There are certain movies that are made for adults but can be watched and appreciated by children on a different level. I'm not entirely sure any of these three fit that bill. I think to truly appreciate what people are going after here, you kind of have. I listen to what I'm really saying and not what you think I'm saying.
No, I'm listening. I'm listening.
These are movies where, and Robert and I have talked about this, they can only be truly appreciated by people who have lived. When you have lived a life, when you've had some shit happen to you, when you have wisdom and experience and scars and burns, you can look at a piece of cinema, you can look at a piece of art and go, okay, I identify with this. Not because it's drag or it's this or it's that or it's black or it's white or it's Irish, but I identify with what these people are going through because I have also walked that kind of journey.
I mean, it can be anything. I had that
Yeah,
experience. I've been playing the third game in the Wolfenstein Alt History saga lately, and there was a part in the first about 45 minutes of the game, a flashback sequence, that the very first time I played it, I got through that sequence and I had to shut the game off and go decompress for a while because it hit so close to
right.
home with things that I grew up hearing in my household and a very certain environment that I that shaped me in some ways that I still don't talk about too openly.
So do I think he
Um
could have gotten something out of the experience? Yeah,
so
probably. He's a smart
yeah.
kid. And these are good movies to one degree or another. But does he have the life experience to truly appreciate the essence of what these films are
No,
about? No. And that's why I
no.
was like, I'm not going to force these on you. You live. Come back to me in 20 years. All right. So speaking of 20 years, To Wong Foo. Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. When Noxzema, which is a hilarious name, Noxzema Jackson in Vita Boheme win a New York drag pageant, they tie for the crown and decide to take a cross-country road trip to Hollywood, bringing along a shy newcomer named Chichi Rodriguez. The plan takes a turn when their car breaks down in a conservative rural town. Stranded for the weekend, the Queens slowly win over the initially skeptical locals with their kindness, fashion sense, and life advice. Vita, in particular, helps a local woman escape domestic abuse. By the way, again, Stalker Channing, who, like, I only thought she was Rizzo in Greece. Who knew she had a whole career? Well, Chi Chi finds romance. The townspeople ultimately embrace their fabulous visitors, even defending them against a homophobic police officer. The film ends with the Queens moving on toward their next adventure, but not before leaving the town changed for the better. Tu Wong Fu is less about glamour and more about impact, how visibility and decency can shift hearts even in America's most conservative corners. Yeah, the essence of this movie is strangers come into a town and leave it better than they found it. Tale as
Hmm.
old as time. What did you think? And I know you have some. There was something very
Yes.
specific you wanted to get to with this movie, so go ahead and then go into your craft review.
Yes, part that I briefly warned you about earlier. So here it goes. Um, of course, if you're watching this, the four easily highest profile stars of this movie are four, correction, three straight men and one who tragically, posthumously, we'd later learn was bisexual. But I'm going to keep in mind at the time that, as far as we knew, Robin Williams was straight. I believe, if I understand correctly, his daughter Zelda has since confirmed, yes, he was bi. But otherwise, you have John Leguizamo, Patrick Swayze, and Wesley Snipes. And I am 99% of the time, yes, a firm believer that the most deserving performers to play queer roles are queer actors because there are elements of our day to day lives, our identities, our upbringings, our tragedies and triumphs that we can bring to playing members of our community that straight people, with all due respect, even the staunchest ally, will never 100% understand ever because they haven't lived it. I learned that after living 30 plus years of my life as a straight man and then coming out when I realized no, I am absolutely not straight and I probably never really was. Um, but there are performers, rare ones, the exceptions that prove the rule, that take these roles on and earn respect for the respect with which they treat our community, our stories, our characters, and they do their absolute damnedest to bring as much genuine gravitas and authenticity to those roles as possible according to our experiences. And again, they're rare. I would give Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger all the credit in the world. They did they did it. Robin Williams, again, keep in mind we thought he was straight at the time, but among the community, and I was talking about this with my friend Lance earlier, the same friend, there was always a sense of he's a little too good at this. Ain't no way. um, but at the same time, you have Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, and John Leguizamo. Three men who absolutely did right by the community every step of the way. And it bears noting, Patrick Swayze grew up in a more artistic kind of background that I think he gets credit for because of roles like Roadhouse. Um, I'm told that a football coach once signed him up for ballet training because he lacked any coordination, any grace, and part of it just kind of stuck with him as an artist. Um, I don't know as much about how John Leguizamo grew up, but again, I will say this about both of them. Neither, I think Swayze was a phenomenally gifted performer who was unfortunately pigeonholed by his most iconic roles at times. That is prior to him making especially Ghost and Donnie Darko. I don't believe John Leguizamo has ever fully gotten his flowers for just what a phenomenal actor with so much range and so much charisma as he is. But the big one for me is Wesley Snipes because he's known as the action guy. He's known for Blade, Passenger 57. Let's go ahead and throw New Jack City in there. You mentioned, of course, White Men Can't Jump, but he doesn't necessarily get remembered as much for White Men Can't Jump as he does for Blade. He doesn't get remembered for To Wong Foo as much as he does for New Jack City or Passenger 57. And quite frankly, that's fucking bullshit because he brings it with so much nonstop immersion, charisma, and flat fucking out humor. But here's the other thing.
One sec. I'm
He,
going to put something on the screen. Just laugh at it and keep going. Alrighty then.
I ain't saying a word.
Hey,
Anyway,
while you're taking a breath, I'm going to raise one counterpoint, just so people are just like, why doesn't Mark push back on this when he pushes back
sure.
on everything else? So I'm going to push back on your argument because I don't agree with it. Here are my pieces of evidence to submit to the court, and then I'm going to give you your last words, and then we move on to the plot synopsis. Acting is acting. I don't particularly care what your background is. I think if you are the best actor for that role, man or woman, gay or straight, white or black, then that's outside unless you're playing a specifically historical figure where the race matters, nothing matters. What matters is talent. And I'm going to give you two examples of straight men who played gay men who I couldn't imagine anyone else playing these characters. And I think if they had, we'd have lost a treasure. Everyone take out your drinking glass because this is now the Rattledge and Broadcasting drinking game, The Wire. Mark mentions The Wire. Take a drink. I'm just gonna read straight from Google Gemini. Michael K. Williams did not identify as gay himself. He famously played the gay character Omar Little on the critically acclaimed series The Wire, and while he was initially apprehensive about portraying the character due to societal stereotypes, he ultimately embraced the role. He even advocated for more intimate gay scenes for Omar, according to Entertainment Weekly. Williams later spoke about the importance of his portrayal of queer characters, recognizing their significance within the broader narrative of Black and LGBTQI plus identity. The other one that came to mind was Eric Stonestreet. He played the gay character in Modern Family, Cam, who is, and he's lightheartedly described himself as openly straight. Oddly enough, his co-star and on-screen husband, Jesse Tyler Ferguson, who is actually gay for real life, jokingly called him gay for pay. So again, two really, I think, excellent examples of being blind to identity and just open to ability.
Yes, they are, but they're also exceptions that prove the rule. Again, I didn't say that no straight act. I said there's a reason I said 99% of the time this is what I believe. Yes, I would absolutely give you Eric Stonestreet in a heartbeat. I've never seen The Wire. I take your word for it on that.
You've never
But
seen
a
The
lot of
Wire?
Mark, you got to remember, a lot of my life the last few years has been like Captain America coming out of the ice. Been trying to play catch up. But the thing is, a lot of my opinion of that also comes from the fact that for years you had Hollywood turning to cishet actors first, whereas you had gay actors for whom the only work they could get was playing the fucking caricatures, was playing Hollywood's insultingly, infuriatingly reductive versions of queer people. And so, yeah, it has sometimes been galling for them to sit back and go, I could have brought so much to this character that this a straight man or woman wouldn't even begin to consider. But I couldn't even get in the room for an audition because they immediately just went straight to him or her. It was one of the reasons there was so much pushback against Scarlett Johansson when she said as much about playing a trans character. When there are so many trans actors out there going, I'm right here. I I'm free for the next however many months you might near me. You pay me enough, I'll clear the next 12 for you. Um, but the other thing I want to bring up about Wesley, and it's a subtle thing that not as many people notice, but I think it's one of the best indicators of what a great performance that he gave, was the moment when they first arrive in Snyderville. And you can see it in his eyes, in the way he is just looking around, clocking everybody. You can see that it's equal parts. I'm a black man in a sundown town, and I'm a drag queen out in the country, and something that is common to both of them. And I can now say this, having experience. I experience it actually every day at work. Is the fact that, especially if you live in the Midwest, in a state like Missouri, and you are a queer person, almost every public location you're walking into, you become Jason fucking Bourne. You are instantly looking around. You're taking stock of the crowd. You want to know where the exits are, because this is what we have to live with every every single day. And even those of us who are very hetero passing, hiya. Um, there's the integral calculus that we have to go through before we talk to almost any member of the same sex, because yeah, gay panic is real, and it's something that we all have to be afraid of, because we've been given cause to. Because yeah, I know not all straight people, but we're at the point where almost every queer person has got a story about a straight person or a cis person. Someone walks into my store where I'm one of the older employees, and I especially work with a lot of high school and young college age, gay, lesbian, and gender queer people. Someone walks in with a MAGA hat or anything else that I associate with that fucking cult. I look forward to your comments. Um, I am instantly keeping them out of the corner of my eye the entire time that I'm working, just in case, because it's happened, because it can happen in an instant, and it happens again and again. So Wesley doing that, it kind of was a moment where, even if it was coming more from him being a black man in a white world than trying to portray a drag queen in the country, I still get it.
Yeah, there's a
I
lot
still
about
very much felt
Wesley's.
that.
There's a lot about Wesley being a gay, drag, black man in that area, and the way he's portraying that character that is one of the things I really like about this movie. So let's talk about it.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, I've lost track of where we were here. What else? I for some odd reason I thought I didn't read the plot synopsis, but I did already. We've passed that point. Good. Did I read the? Yeah, I did. I read the plot synopsis, didn't I?
Yeah, you basically did.
Okay. Yeah, let me just get into the movie.
Oh wait, no, well, you really didn't. But if you don't want to, I kind of understand. We can just kind of take plot points as they come up if you want to.
No, I read this. I know I read this out loud already. Okay, so my thoughts on this movie. Not as good as Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, but let me say this. This movie, the best thing about it is its performances, and the best performer in this, in my opinion, is John Leguizamo. We talk about actors just being lost in the makeup, lost in the costume, and John Leguizamo completely disappeared into that character.
Oh,
I did not see John, and it's not because he was dressed up as a girl. It's because his persona, his performance is transformative. I can
it's one of his hallmarks as an actor. He does it and makes it look so fucking easy.
He's really a chameleon. Whereas Wesley Snipes looks like a guy in a dress, which is fine. That happens. Some people are more transformative. Some very much look like, and I'm going to quote here.
Yeah, I give you that.
I'm going to quote Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, boy in a dress. Or actually, this movie, they say it several times, boy in a dress. Patrick Swayze, there are sometimes I lose him.
You forget you're watching Patrick Swayze.
And other times, it's very obvious you're watching Patrick Swayze. It kind of depends on how they have him dressed.
But I think the moments when Patrick Swayze comes out are the moments when they want you to glimpse Patrick Swayze underneath the drag for a very good reason.
I'm willing to buy that it's intentional. In any case, I think the difference between Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and To Wong Foo is it's two different presumptions about its audience. Priscilla doesn't care if you know what drag culture is. It's telling its story regardless. You either are on board or you're not.
Mm-hmm.
To Wong Foo operates essentially in the first act as, hey, I don't know if you've ever seen drag culture before, but this is what drag culture is. And this was like, here's how I'll describe it to you. To Wong Foo in the first act comes across like a movie where they're taking the audience and the protagonist, the point of view character, to a fantasy land. And they have to explain the rules of Fantasyland to that character. The bit in the car, once they're on the road, and and Wesley Snipes does the monologue about the difference between gays, drags, trans, and, as his word, transvestites, felt like an executive note that was, if you don't explain this to the cis white middle class audience, no one's gonna get it.
Well, now hold up a minute, player.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually worth explaining, though, because every single day I encounter a parade of straight people who still think those are strictly synonyms. And while I think the specific wording of it made sense for the era, but it wouldn't track as well today because the spectrum is much more fleshed out in terms of our understanding of
Let me counter that with I hear what you're saying, but there's subtext, text, and supertext. You can't.
it. It was super text.
It was
Oh, it was. It was a.
supertext.
I'm not
It
arguing that
was all
part.
the subtlety of a donkey kick.
I
you
know.
know.
I'm not arguing that part. I'm not arguing that it's super
So my
text. What I
issue is
am.
not that it's there. It's my issue is it's how it was handled. It's a writing issue.
Well, yeah, but I think it's one of the few writing issues in the movie that I could call genuinely clumsy because I
Mm-hmm.
felt like everything else was really pretty well executed for what they were trying to do. They weren't going for the same kind of dry humor. It was Priscilla was drama with a splash of humor here and there so that you can laugh just long enough sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
maybe to keep from crying. Um, To Wong Foo doesn't have any pretense about that. The queens are absolutely cutting up. Yes, the story beats are predictable, but
Can we talk about like the gatekeeping that is a central part of this movie?
mm,
So again, that car ride is such an integral part of this movie, and if you blink, you'll miss it. That
mm,
whole first bit where they're doing "you're just a boy in a dress," but if you do X, Y, Z, then you can blossom into a full queen. And John Leguizamo's character's kind of like, "What the fuck? Stop telling me what I am and who I am."
but
And
the thing is, but
what a
Mark,
very real moment that felt like.
well,
That
yeah, it is real
That's
because
what I'm saying. Like,
it,
I'm not arguing with it.
yeah,
I'm saying that is something look, nerds do that to each other. You're not a real Star Wars fan. Like, and that's just a stupid thing as Star Wars fans. Imagine your gender identity being called into question, saying you're not a
mm,
real gender identity because you didn't hit these particular these particular
yeah.
bars.
Well,
And
Mark,
like,
let me
what a
let me
dehumanizing thing that is.
well, yeah, let me paint why that can be so dehumanizing and why they're taking something that can be and trying to paint it with a little bit of a lighter brush. And
Sure.
that's because for a lot of us, when we come out, part of the issue is you struggled enough to really learn to halfway love yourself, for when you thought you were straight, especially if you didn't realize you were queer very early in life. But then once you make that realization, you have to start over from scratch and you have to relearn to love yourself all over again, especially in those of us who are in light of something that we're taught makes you a defective human being in the eyes of everyone else. That is real. And also the tribalism within the queer community is very, very real. When
Yeah.
I came out, one of the reasons I held off for as long as I did and I was so anxious about it. And I want to shout this amazing human being out right now, and that's Jeremy Thomas from 411 Mania. He has the distinction of being probably the second or third friend I came out to, and I was still homeless at the time, so I was already grappling with enough. But what I was terrified about was the fact that by knowing him and listening to other queer friends of mine, I was very aware that bi erasure was a thing. That there were, by all means, people within the queer community that if you weren't either 100% fucking strictly men or strictly women, as far as they were concerned, you didn't count. I was well aware of straight people and some of the criminally infuriating ways that they have treated bisexual and pansexual people in media. So that can be brutal because I didn't know who I was going to face. That if I came out to them, like, so you're a queer man, but you're in a straight facing relationship. So what you're saying is you're not really fucking queer because I knew that was a thing.
I
I mean,
gotta
hell,
cut in
I
for
grew up
just
with,
1 second. You wait your whole life to feel like you fit in somewhere, only to be
huh?
betrayed. And you found that you
Exactly.
don't fit in. It's like, what is
Yes.
there ever a point where I can just relax and stand on terra firma? And it's like God keeps
Well,
saying
and
no. It's always going to be sinking ground.
and here's the thing. I'm trying to navigate this at the time as a cisgender, straight passing white man.
Hmm.
Imagine what that is like if you're also a member of another marginalized community. And the white people have already pigeonholed or outright rejected you. And now you have given your own community that you were born into that is rejecting you too because you don't fit their culture either. This is why found families are such a big thing.
Oh, people ask me all
And
the time why I choose to work from home now and I don't leave the house much. Everything you just said.
and again, I'm grappling with all this, and Jeremy Thomas,
Hmm.
bless them for the rest of their lives onwards. One of the best friends I have ever made, and one of the reasons I'm genuinely kind of sorry it didn't work out at 411. Um, and yes, you can finally, after all these years, quote me on that. Um, but he was nothing but understanding, patient, welcoming, and I'm sorry, I just remembered they changed their pronouns. I'm still kind of getting used to it. It's been years of referring to them as he himself. Please, Jeremy, sincerest apologies. Um, they were nothing but accepting, nothing but patient, nothing but guiding, and they have been every single time we've kind of talked about the goings on within our community ever since. The kind of friend that I believe that every queer person should have. And by the end of the movie, you realize that although the love was tough at first, you realize that that was the found family
Hmm.
that Chi Chi fell into. And did they fight like a family? Oh fuck yeah, the girls was fighting.
So, in the
Um,
interest of time,
but
I gotta hit a few points here, and then we gotta move on to Hedwig,
okay.
because we're getting on an hour and a half now.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep the pacing. I swear.
It's fine, Sean. Next week here's the real test. We're gonna have rejoined by Matt Kettner, so we really have to
Ooh,
rein it in a bit. But
gay three way, gay three way.
and once again, I'm in a threesome I didn't want to be in. No, so
Again? Yeah.
I have a T-shirt and everything. Listen, Wesley Snipes, because there's three. Here's the thing: there's three distinct characters here. You have the one with the hero complex. You have the one, trying to every day is a struggle to prove to people he is what he is and not what you say he is. Then you have the one who the entire world is an enemy encampment. And it's so funny. Wesley Snipes' character, and I don't know if I would have thought about I didn't. I certainly didn't. It didn't occur to me last year, and I don't know if it would have occurred to me as a high school, college kid. But Wesley Snipes' character is the one I kind of most identify with, not necessarily because I've been through that same struggle, but I understand more of him than I do Patrick
When I
Swayze or
look at
John
you, I think
Leguizamo.
hulking black man.
Good, thank you. That's why you come. That's why I always invite you back. You know how to butter me up. Just what the thing to say. Listen to me. Wesley Snipes' character. It's so funny because his whole thing is I adore and idolize Hollywood starlets. It's the thing he uses to connect with the elder woman character, the one who is mute and then finds the power of speech by talking to somebody who's interested in her as a
Mm,
person. And that is the whole point that I'm trying to get across. Is that Wesley Snipes' character, Noxzema, is very well aware that he's black, a man, a gay, a drag, all of these things and knows that all of these any one of these things, let alone all of them, engender conflict, engender violence, and
mm,
he has decided very very intentionally, I'm gonna be good, I'm gonna be me, but I'm it's what I was saying about before about Felicia and Priscilla. This is the commonality is he's kind of coming from the Terrence Stamp point of view of learn how to navigate this world or you're going to get yourself killed. No one's saying don't be you, but Jesus Christ, you don't have to be you every time in every place and, put yourself in a position of fighting everyone. That's stupid. That is a waste of your time and a quick way to get dead. And Wesley Snipes is like, so that is the basis for my character, but I'm also this person who really likes Hollywood starlets. And that's kind of all I want to talk about. And that's what I mean by like that's the part of his character that I connect with. I've often said, I don't want to go off on a long tangent about it, but I've often said that, like, I wish people would engage me more about this sort of thing, podcasting and big ideas and things that I'm interested in, and not on the fact that I was a cancer survivor. I don't want to talk about my fucking cancer ever. Not that I'm ashamed of it or anything like that, but there's no talent in surviving cancer. And some would argue, well, you're a big, strong man and you manage to do it, and some people don't and can't even do that much. Oh, good for that.
Can I ask you something? Not as a movie reviewer, but as Sean Comer, your friend and a human being.
Okay.
And it asking you as somebody with a background in psychiatry, why do you think it is that some groups are so constantly reduced to that one facet of their identity? The black person that meets white people.
Robert Winfrey is a brilliant person, and he said something to me, and it stuck with me since he said it. And it was such a very plain, straightforward biological thing, but it was brilliant. One of the things the brain does well is categorize. It looks for patterns.
Okay.
And it wants to simplify things. It does not deal well with confusion and being bogged down in a lot of complexities. It wants to make sense of things. And so people intrinsically tend to latch onto a characteristic as a way of identifying and
that's just kind of
categorizing
the way
things.
they choose to kind of try to relate to that person. I'm going to try really hard to relate to their experience as a black man or a gay person or an Asian or a Latino, anything like that.
They need something to kind of hook on
or
and
a cancer survivor or a disability.
Right. So so Wesley Snipes going, I don't want to talk about that I'm a gay drag, yada, yada, yada. I want to talk about Hollywood starlets. And I'm like, yeah, I hear you, Wesley Snipes' character. I hear you, Nagzima. I liked that element of, if we could just talk about the movie. I like that part about the movie because, one, it was a very human, very lovely thing. It was like this poor woman. We talked about this with X. Boy, you get to be a certain age, and boy, does society just write you off. You are of no use to anyone. And this woman just kind of having that tacit realization that no one cares about me, and I'm no longer of value, so I'll just be mute and kind of exist as a husk of myself. And there's Nagzima, who is just looking for someone to not see her as all these other things and just see her as somebody who likes actors. And that's how they found a connection, and that's how she comes out of her shell, and they are able to form a bond. And then, and through that, Nagzima becomes less of a coward. She's willing to stand up to the guys in town who are hooting and hollering at the girls, and does something that annoyed me, but I'm going to allow it in this fictional fantasy land, where she grabs the one guy by his balls, and somehow nobody seems to have a problem with this or stops
I loved that part. I fucking loved it.
I'm so tired of that sort of thing, so I'm kind of like retroactively reacting negatively to it, but in its place, in its time, 30 years ago, it is what it is. And to wrap this up, and to kind of put a final bow on this, I like the movie. I think there's no way I can get around the fact this was clearly written for an American audience, with all of the notes and all of the keeping it sanitized as we could. I mean, Stockard Channing's last thing to Patrick Swayze, where I don't see you as a man, I don't see you as a woman, I see you as an angel, is as much of an apology for this movie as this movie's gonna make. In the sense of, like, we don't know how else to talk about this, so we'll just say that, and we'll have Patrick Swayze kind of uncomfortably go, I'll allow it, and we'll move on from this. It's a nice scene. I got what they were going for with Stockard Channing saying that, in considering the relationship between the two, he's saving her from incessant domestic violence. It was like, I don't think anything was mean-spirited intended by it, but it was definitely, like, there definitely seemed to be, at some level with this movie, a feeling of unease. and trying to reconcile that unease in the text of the movie.
Mhm.
And I think there's a draft of this that's much more brave and uh, much more in conflict with modern American mores in the year of our Lord 1995. That a studio exec was like, no fucking way, rewrite this. I'm not letting this. You're not putting this in American theaters. So I will give you the last 50 words or less, and then we'll get into Hedwig.
Okay, I'll do this as best I can. I normally don't go in for movies that I would consider to be especially idealistic or especially those that really dive into Aaron Sorkin level fucking wish fulfillment. But I have to say, what I like about this movie is the fact that its idealism doesn't feel so far flung. And that's the
Mhm.
fact that even what the townspeople are initially awkward about, save of course for Chris Penn's Sheriff Dullard. Yes, I know. But it's the fact that what they're put off by, as you know, revealed when Stockard Channing reveals she knew all along.
Yeah,
Not that it was three men dressed flamboyantly as women, but it was more their cosmopolitan nature
yeah.
than anything else as outsiders to their little isolated hamlet that really kind of put their teeth on edge initially and made them resistant.
It's like, you
But the
don't belong
fact
here.
is,
Why? Because we're gay and drag? No, because you're fucking from the city. Jesus
well,
Christ.
but here's the important part. Here's the part that I liked because I don't know if the symbolism was intentional, but it's right there. And you know, the phrase "no cops at Pride" exists for a reason. It's because too much of, the queer community's experience and history with police is made up of assault, exploitation, entrapment, sexual assault, rape, being preyed upon. That was what was happening at the time of Stonewall. This is what has to be explained sometimes to straight people and even to a lot of younger queer people
And
who
to Roland
just
Emmerich.
yeah, exactly, who kind of don't know the history and why we have pride in the first place. So, yeah, did it make my queer little heart swell a little bit when a sheriff rolls up with rhetoric and words that absolutely, no doubt, echo what people probably heard at the Stonewall riots when they took place, and to see a crew of brazenly unafraid straight people step up and say, "Go through us first. I wish you would." Um, is it pandering? Yeah, maybe. But at the same time, it's pandering because it is what every single queer person at some point has wished a fucking straight person who could have intervened would have done, but didn't. And so, yeah, for once, we get to see a movie that's not necessarily grounded, that's not necessarily just focusing on the darkest parts of our experience, and instead gets to just show our version of wouldn't it be great? Hey, this is what we'd like. No, we don't want to convert the straight people to being gay. We want you to just stand up for us as other human beings. Did that make me glad? Yes. And fuck you if you expect me to feel sorry for being glad that I got to see that little fantasy played out for once, because a lot of us in real life don't get to see it played out enough. So if that's a problem, if you feel like it's being shoved down your throat, you know what? At the time, there was a lot of shit about the queer community that was being shoved down our throats back in the 90s. So this was a breath of fresh air for us.